Shalom, Bekam, Kal Yashara'al, how's your peace, Israel? Welcome back to another video. And we are in Wayikra Hasafa, the book of Wayikra, or the book of Leviticus, chapter 22. And it reads on this wise. It says, "And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to Aaron and his sons, so that they abstain from the holy things of the people of Israel, which they dedicate to me, so that they do not profane my holy name. I am the Lord. Say to them, if any one of all your offspring throughout your generations approaches the holy things that the people of Israel dedicate to the Lord while he has uncleanness, that person shall be cut off from my presence. I am the Lord. None of the offspring of Aaron who has a leprous disease or discharge may eat of the holy things until he is clean. Whoever touches anything that is unclean through contact with the dead, or a man who has an emission of semen, whoever touches a swarming thing by which he may be made clean, or a person from whom he may take uncleanness, whatever his uncleanness may be, the person who touches such a thing shall be unclean until the evening, and shall not eat of the holy things, unless he has bathed his body in water. When the sun goes down, he shall be clean, and afterwards he may eat of the holy things, because they are his food. He shall not eat what dies of itself, or is torn by beasts, and so make himself unclean by it. I am the Lord. They shall therefore keep my charge, lest they bear sin for it and die. Thereby, when they profane it, I am the Lord who sanctifies them. A layperson shall not eat of a holy thing. No foreign guest or of the priests or hired worker shall eat of a holy thing. But if a priest buys a slave as his property for money, the slave may eat of it, and anyone born in his house may eat of his food. If a priest's daughter marries a layman, she shall not eat of the contribution of the holy things. But if a priest's daughter is widowed or divorced, and has no child, and returns to her father's house, as in her youth, she may eat of her father's food, yet no layperson shall eat of it. And if anyone eats of a holy thing unintentionally, he shall add the fifth of his value to it, and give the holy thing to the priest. They shall not profane the holy things of the people of Israel, which they contribute to the Lord, and so cause them to bear iniquity and guilt, by eating their holy things, for I am the Lord who sanctifies them." Next context is acceptable offerings. It says, "And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to Aaron and his sons and all the people of Israel, and say to them, when any one of the house of Israel or of the sojourners in Israel presents a burnt offering as his offering for any of their vows or freewill offerings that they offer to the Lord, if it is acceptable to you, it shall be a male without blemish." I wonder why it's a male without blemish. A blemish without sin, right? "Of the bull or the sheep or of the goats, you shall not offer anything that has a blemish, for it will not be accepted for you. And anyone offers a sacrifice or peace offering to the Lord to fulfill a vow or his freewill offering from the herd or from the flock to be accepted, it must be perfect, i.e. Hamashiach. There shall be no blemish in it. Animals blind or disabled or mutilate or having a discharge or an itch or scabs, you shall not offer to the Lord or give them to the Lord as a food offering on the altar. You may present a bull or a lamb that has a part too long or too short for a freewill offering, but for a vow offering, it cannot be accepted. Any animal that has its testicles bruised or crushed or torn or cut, you shall not offer to the Lord. You shall not do it within your hand, neither shall you offer as the bread of your God. Any such animal gotten from a foreigner, since there is a blemish in them because of their mutilation, they will not be accepted for you. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, When an ox or a sheep or goat is born, it shall remain 7 days with its mother, and from the 8th day on it shall be acceptable as a food offering to the Lord. But you shall not kill an ox or a sheep and a young in 1 day. And when you sacrifice a sacrifice of thanksgiving to the Lord, you shall sacrifice it so that you may be accepted. It shall be eaten on the same day. You shall leave none of it until the morning. I am the Lord. So you shall keep my commandments and do them. I am the Lord You shall not profane my holy name, that I may be sanctified among the people of Israel. I am the Lord who sanctifies you, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am the Lord. We're going to go into a famous chapter, which is dealing with, the feast of the Lord, chapter 23. And it reads, it says, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the people of Israel and say to them, these are the appointed feasts of the Lord that you shall proclaim as holy convocations. They are my appointed feasts. 6 days shall work be done, but on the seventh day is the Shabbat of solemn rest, a holy convocation. You shall do no work. It is a Shabbat to the Lord in all your dwellings. Right? That means that it doesn't matter where you are, you're supposed to observe the Shabbat, right? If you descend from the children of Israel, this is something you must do. And if you're trying to become part of the children of Israel, this is what you must do. Passover is the context. These are the appointed feasts of the Lord, the holy convocations which you shall proclaim at the time appointed for them. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at twilight, which is between the evenings, after sunset and before Layla, which is night. So it's when the period of light is where it's still kind of light, but the sun has set. You see what I'm saying? It's still blue in the sky. And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread to the Lord, which is the next day. For 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. On the first day you shall have a holy convocation. You shall not do any ordinary work, but you shall present a food offering to the Lord for 7 days. On the seventh day is a holy convocation. You shall do no ordinary work. Context is here the feast of first fruits. It says, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the people of Israel, say to them, when you come into the land that I give you and reap its harvest, and you shall bring the sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the priest, he shall wave the sheaf before the Lord, so that you may be accepted. On the day after the Shabbat, the priest shall wave it. And on that day, when you wave the sheaf, you shall offer a male lamb a year without blemish, as a burnt offering to the Lord. And the grain offering with it shall be 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, a food offering offered to the Lord with a pleasing aroma. And a drink offering with it shall be of wine, a fourth of a hin. And you shall eat neither bread nor grain, parched or fresh, until this same day, until you brought the offering of your Lord, of your God. It is a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. Now, this is an interesting thing that many people may not be privy to understand or to apply, because this is actually saying that in the month of Abib, it would be the beginning of months, it's the beginning of the year, right? So that's when you would have seen the barley ears, as you read in the book of Exodus. It talks about the reason why we knew it was Abib is because we saw the barley ears. The others were still in there, were still in buds. They hadn't flowered yet. So in this context, what we're gonna say? Yeah, that was it. Within this context, we are trying to understand, what does it mean by you shall eat neither neither bread nor grain, parched or fresh ears in the self-same day until you brought the offering of the Lord. So basically, on this specific day, which is the 16th, right, the first fruits, you shall not eat any of your harvest. So the barley that you've just has just come in Abib, you're not supposed to eat any of it until the 16th day. You're not supposed to take any of it and make bread. You're not supposed to, you're not supposed to. Parched grain is like roasted. It's like corn. It's like if you to put it on just put the kernels of barley on a pan and roast it. That's what it means. And then fresh ears means that you like just taking it as it's on the heads of the plant. You take some and just eat it. You're not supposed to eat any of it. It doesn't say you're not allowed to harvest it, but it says you're not supposed to eat any of it until the first fruits. The first fruits means that your first harvest is supposed to be offered to the Father. Now, in this case, the priesthood, there is no one for us to actually take these first fruits to. Now, if we're in the land, I guess you could technically take them to Mellow, which is the two Um, so mellow. So this mellow is the two. Do you see these here? These two, there's entrances. When you come inside, there's actually entrances. These areas here, they're actually hollow. This is called mellow. This is the storehouse. This is where they put food inside. You see, so if you really wanted to part, but really you had the priest that would do that. But it's no harm to actually put some food there and actually let people get used to the fact that there is actually going to be food in the Father's storehouse, because this is the Father's place. You see what I'm saying? It's not a must. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a must. Why I say that? Because the priest was typically the one that was supposed to deal with these offerings, right? What you could do is that you could go and give them to the poor or something like that. That would be a nice thing to do. I mean, it's still something that you really can't exercise as of yet, because there is no priesthood. But one thing you can exercise is the fact that you're not supposed to eat any of your grain until the 16th day. You see what I'm saying? So typically what I tend to do, especially in the because it says in all your generations, in all your dwellings. So I typically, when it comes to the month of Abib, I personally don't eat any bread. Yeah, I don't eat any bread or parched grain or fresh. I don't eat anything relating to like the barley season or anything like that. I don't eat any bread like that until it hits the 16th day. Now, the only difference is that when you hit the 14th/15th day, you're allowed to eat unleavened bread, which is not really classed as what's listed here. Unleavened is called something else, right? That's something that isn't raised, hasn't got it's got no leaven in. Yeah, so this is dealing with bread that's got yeast in it, and then the other two is parched, which is roasted, and then obviously the fresh is. The only thing you can do at that particular time is you can eat unleavened bread, because that's what the day before you're supposed to be eating unleavened bread, right? And let's continue. The context next is the Feast of Weeks. It says, "You shall count 7 full weeks from the day after the Sabbath, Shabbat, from the day that you brought the sheaf of your wave offering. You shall count 50 days to the day after the 7th Shabbat. Then you shall present a grain offering of new grain to the Lord. You shall bring from your dwelling places 2 loaves of bread to be waved, made of two tenths of an ephah. They shall be of fine flour, and they shall be baked with leaven as first fruits to the Lord. And you shall present with the bread, and you shall present with the bread 7 lambs of a year old without blemish, and 1 bull from the herd, and 2 rams. They shall be a burnt offering to the Lord, with their grain offering and their drink offerings, a food offering with a pleasing aroma to the Lord. You shall offer 1 male goat for a sin offering, and 2 male lambs a year old as a sacrifice of peace offering. And the priest shall wave them with the bread of the first fruits as a wave offering before the Lord with 2 lambs. They shall be holy to the Lord for the priest, and you shall make a proclamation on the same day. You shall hold a holy convocation. You shall not do any ordinary work. It is a statute forever in all your dwellings throughout your generation. This is the Feast of Weeks, right? Now, we're actually going to find out when that day is, right? Oh, I kind of overlooked it. It's on verse 15. It says, "You shall count 7 full weeks from after the Shabbat, from the day that you have brought the sheaf wave offering. You shall count 50 days to the day after the 7th Shabbat." All right. So this is basically, you count seven Sabbaths, and we know that the Shabbat is based on the lunar cycle, right? So we're dealing with the crescent moon, that's the new moon. Then from there, 7 days, it's going to be the half moon, then the full moon, then the half moon, then the final crescent. That would have been 4 weeks. We have to count 7, so it's going to be 1 month and 3 weeks, right? And then the day after that Shabbat, that is going to be the day first feast of weeks, which is going to be, the first day of the week. Now, one thing trips many people up, which myself, which the way it's worded here, I think just the way the translators typically translate this thing is that you're supposed to be able to count 50 days. Now, if you count 50 days from the 16th, you will not find yourself getting 50 days on the first day of the week, because it says it has to be full Shabbat, right? And you'll find that it doesn't work out. Ideally, I think where this translation issue is wrong is that you're supposed to count the 50th days, 50 days, you're supposed to count from the Shabbat, the actual unleavened bread. That's the only way that it can actually make sense. So there has to, from that, I just feel that that's just more of a translational issue here, where they've tried to make it make sense, but you can't count 50 days and then land on the day after the Shabbat as the 50th. It doesn't work. It ends up being something like the 49th day, which is not. It says that you're supposed to be able to count 50. So I would say if you're going to do the counting Omer, you would count on the 50th. I mean, you would count on the unleavened bread, the feast of unleavened bread, the 15th day. Okay. All right, let's continue. It says, and when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap your field right up to its edge, nor shall you gather the gleanings after your harvest. You shall leave them for the poor and for the sojourner. I am the Lord your God. Feast of Trumpets. 23, it says, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the people of Israel, saying, in the 7th month, on the first day of the month, you shall observe a day of solemn rest, a memorial proclaimed with a blast of trumpets, a holy convocation. You shall not do any ordinary work, and you shall present a food offering to the Lord. Okay, so that's quite straight. That's the first day of the 7th month. So as long as you know the lunar cycle, you can figure out these things. You can easily find out. I actually wrote something down, but maybe I'll do it in the next video. You got Day of Atonement. Verse 26 says, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, now on this 10th day of the 7th month. So now if you know the 7th month, you then obviously just count 7 days, 10 days from the first day, which is the crescent. On the 10th day of the 7th month is the Day of Atonement. It shall be for you a time of holy convocation, and you shall afflict yourselves and present a food offering to the Lord. And you shall not do any work on that very day, for it is a day of atonement, to make atonement for you before the Lord your God. For whoever is not afflicted on that very day shall be cut off from his people. And whoever does any work on that very day, that person I will destroy from among his people. You shall not do any work. It is a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwelling places. It shall be to you a Shabbat of solemn rest. And you shall afflict yourselves on the 9th day of the month, beginning at evening. From evening to evening shall you keep your Shabbat. The Feast of Booths. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the people of Israel, saying, on the 15th day of the 7th month, for 7 days in the Feast of Booths to the Lord. On the first day shall be a holy convocation. You shall not do any ordinary work. For 7 days you shall present food offerings to the Lord. On the 8th day you shall hold a holy convocation and present a food offering to the Lord. It's a solemn assembly. You shall not do any ordinary work. These are the appointed feasts of the Lord, which you shall proclaim. Feast of okay. These are the appointed feasts you shall proclaim as times of holy convocation, for presenting to the Lord food offerings and burnt offerings, grain offerings, sacrifices, and drink offerings, each on its proper day. Besides the Lord's Sabbaths, and beside your gifts, beside all your vow offerings, and beside all your freewill offerings, which you gave to the Lord. And on the 15th day of the 7th day, when you gathered in the produce of the land, you shall celebrate the feast of the Lord for 7 days. On the first day shall be a solemn rest, and on the 8th day shall be a solemn rest. And you shall take on the first day the fruit of the splendid trees, branches, palm trees, and boughs of your leafy trees and willows of brook. You shall rejoice before the Lord your God 7 days, and you shall celebrate it as your feast to the Lord for 7 days in a year. And it's a statute forever throughout your generations. You shall celebrate it in your 7th month. You shall dwell in booths, i.e., you shall be dwelling in tents. For 7 days, all native Israelites shall dwell in booths. It's quite specific. It says all native Israelites shall dwell in booths, that your generations may know that I made the people of Israel dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Thus Moses declared to the people of Israel the appointed feasts of the Lord. So you can see that the Feast of Tabernacles or Feast of, or Chag Sukkot, or Chag. Chag means feast, and then I think it's Sachawath, which is more the ancient way of pronouncing it. Yeah, in that particular time, that's the Feast of Gatherings, like the final harvest. And, it's a celebration, and it typically marks a similar scenario of when we left Egypt. It's a memorialization. So that's why these holy days are important, because if you know you're from the children of Israel, it's in your advantage to memorialize the things that your forefathers went through in order for you to be in the situation you're in. And yeah, we might not be in the greatest of situations, but they agreed to do these things. And actually, by you adhering to these things, you will be blessed by these things. So you should celebrate, because you're part of the chosen seed. You're part of a lineage of people that the Father is dealing with directly. You see, what a blessing. Now, obviously, at the beginning, it's a bit of it's like a curse, because you're amongst the curses. You don't know who you are. So the curses are used to wake you up, to make you realize that there's something not right in your life, that you're having to turn your gauge, your vision to, because people around you seem to just have things all mapped out. You're doing almost identically the same thing, yet you're getting paid less. You'll get tired easier. You get injured easier. Your relationships don't last. There's all these different things. They're not working, right? Fatherless households, motherless households, all these things are not working. Everyone else around you is working. Life's working. That shows you that there's something under the cover that is working against you, and you do not know. And there's a conscious effort for people in the Christian church to kind of do away with the Old Testament, so that the children of Israel will never come to understand the reason why they are in the positions that they're in. That's why it said they tell the people the law has been done away with. It's because it's for the children of Israel to not go to that side of the book, because as soon as they go to that side of the book, redemption draws nigh. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's Shaitan. Shaitan is trying to stop us from going back to that side of the book. It's because that's where our redemption lies, is that we are supposed to go back and serve the Torah. And that's what Hamashiach came to point us back to. He said he came not only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Why? Because he brought us back to the Torah. So that we're supposed to adhere to the Torah, so we can get out of captivity in the future and go back to the land that flows with milk and honey, right? This is what we are here for. This is what we're made to do. We are made to observe the Torah, because the Torah is what is the covenant that is going to bind you to the land that we are exiled from, right? Hallelujah, Yakai. Let's continue. We're on chapter 24. It says, the lamps. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, command the people of Israel to bring you pure oil from beaten olives for the lamp, that a light may be kept burning regularly outside the veil of the testimony in the tent of the meeting. Aaron shall arrange it from evening to morning before the Lord regularly. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations. He shall arrange the lamps on the lampstand of pure gold before the Lord regularly. Next concept, the bread of the tabernacle. It says, you shall take fine flour and bake 12 loaves from it. 2/10 of an ephah shall be in each loaf, and you shall set them in 2 piles, 6 in a pile, on the table of pure gold before the Lord. And you shall put frankincense on each pile, that it may go with the bread as a memorial portion, as a food offering to the Lord. Every Shabbat day, Aaron shall arrange it before the Lord regularly. It is from the people of Israel as a covenant forever. It shall be for Aaron and his sons, and they shall eat in it a holy place, since it is for him a most holy portion out of the Lord's offerings and perpetual due. Punishment for blasphemy. It says, now an Israelite woman's son, whose father was an Egyptian. Now an Israelite woman's son, whose father was Egyptian, went out from among the people of Israel, and the Israelite woman's son and a man of Israel fought in the camp, and the Israelite woman's son blasphemed the name and cursed. Then they brought him to Moses. His mother's name was Shelomith, the daughter of Dibri of the tribe of Dan, and they put him in custody till the will of the Lord should be clear to them. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Bring out of the camp the one who cursed, and let all who heard him lay his hands on his head, and let all the congregation stone him, and speak to the people. Okay, so we're seeing it. Blasphemy is not just just in the New Testament, but we're seeing that there's blasphemy here. It says that the punishment for blasphemy is because he cursed what son and a man of Israel fought in the camp, and the Israelite woman's son blasphemed the name and cursed. Okay, so we're seeing that. Yeah, he's obviously said something ill against the father's name. Okay, and he was stoned to death for this. Okay, so let's continue. It says, and speak to the people of Israel, saying, Whoever curses his God shall bear his sin. Whoever blasphemes the name of the Lord shall surely be put to death. So there's a difference. They say, who curses his God shall bear his sin, but whoever blasphemes the name of the Lord shall surely be put to death. So we know that based on the context of Matthew, where blasphemy is when you attribute something that is righteous to Hashatan, right, to the devil, saying that he is saying the works of something that the Father has done is of the devil. That's what blasphemy would have been. It says, all the congregation shall stone him, the sojourner as well as the native. When he blasphemes the name, shall he be put to death. So this is very severe, as it also says that in the what? And that also talks about in the book of Matthew that's the unforgivable sin. So if you attribute something that of the Father and you attribute it to the work of the devil, that is what we class as blasphemy. Because that's the context of Matthew when they're talking about the Pharisees were saying that's the work of the devil, right? And then he goes on to talk about that how can the devil cast out the devil? It says a kingdom amongst itself shall not stand. Divided amongst itself shall not stand. And that just goes into the children of Israel, is that we need to come together as brothers and sisters, because a kingdom divided amongst itself shall not stand. We will not come and stand up as a nation if we do not come together. But we know that 2/3 are going to be cut off. So, come together, my people. If you really the real agenda is you should be seeking Zion. That's the only, if you really want to be as a nation, everyone should be wanting to go home. That's if that's not on your heart and you want to stay in captivity, I don't think you're going to be part of that remnant that gets redeemed. I think you end up being brought out, and you end up in another place. You're not going to come to Israel. You're not going to be part of the inheritance if you don't want to seek your inheritance. I don't see how you could observe Torah and not seek your inheritance, because the Torah has everything to do with your inheritance. It don't make no sense to me. And all people talk about they're waiting on God and all sort of stuff. God's waiting for you. He's waiting for you to observe this thing properly, so that then you come out. You don't wait for God. God is waiting. His covenant has been open the whole time. It's us that needs to fix ourselves. Anyway, an eye for an eye. So it says, whoever takes a human life shall surely be put to death. Whoever takes an animal's life shall make it good, life for life. If anyone injures his neighbor as he has done, it shall be done to him. Fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Whatever injury he has given a person shall be given to him. Whoever kills an animal shall make it good, and whoever kills a person shall be put to death. You shall have the same rule for the sojourner and for the native, for I am the Lord your God. So Moses spoke to the people of Israel, and they brought out of the camp the one who had cursed and stoned him with stones. Thus the people of Israel did as the Lord commanded Moses. All right, we're going to go into chapter 25, right? The Spirit is moving, right? It says, the Lord spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, saying, Speak to the people of Israel, saying to them, When you come into the land that I give you, the land shall keep a Shabbat to the Lord. For 6 years you shall sow the field, and for 6 years you shall prune your vineyards and gather its fruit. But on the 7th year there shall be a Shabbat of solemn rest for the land, a Shabbat to the Lord. So we read this in Exodus. This is the second witness now, right? Remember, these are different books, okay? We know that there is a particular year where you're supposed to let the land rest, right? We also read in Exodus or in Leviticus, I'm not sure, where actually when you come into the land, you're actually supposed to your harvest, you're not supposed to eat your harvest for the first 3 years. First 3 years are supposed to be forbidden. But the 4th year is supposed to be holy to the Lord, and then the 5th year is when you're allowed to actually eat of the land, right? So, what it will say, so now we're dealing with the Shabbat year. So, in order for us to establish where the Shabbat year is, we also need to fit into the cycle of life. You can't just all of a sudden come into land of Israel and start counting year 1, year 2. It doesn't work like that. There are cycles of things. The Father has his ordinances, his times. Like a year, 1,000 years is like a day unto the Father. You see what I'm saying? And a day unto the Father is like 1,000 years unto us, right? So we need to understand where are we on his timeline. And how we can understand things is when there are specific events that are written in the scriptures to give us indications about where we are on the timeline, i.e. the 400-year captivity. We know that there is something called a jubilee. A jubilee is typically 50 years, and after 50 years, there is something called a year. It's called a year of release. It's where everyone that is, a slave or whatnot who lives within someone's land or who's been held captive, he is supposed to be let go, free, and go back to his possessions. Right now, we typically had a longer servitude, because typically 50 years would be the cutoff period. So technically in 1619, when the first slaves came over, or first slaves were recorded, 50 years after that, we would have been released. But it was prophesied that we'd go into slavery for 400 years. Why? Well, I guess the prophecy probably reflects the fact that they wiped out our name, didn't they? They kind of like, they beat our names out of us and all this sort of stuff. So that's why I feel like it was even more difficult for us to even recognize that we are supposed to go back after 50 years. And plus, I don't think they would have let us go anyway. And it's the same thing that's happening now. It's the same thing that's happening it happened in Egypt, is that we've been 50 years is supposed to be year of release, but we've been kept 8 times those 50 years, which is 400 years. And I think that is the section where, the father knows that they've kept us for too long, because if they were to adhere to the laws, if Esau or the Canaanites were supposed to adhere to the laws, they would have known that after 50 years, they were supposed to go back to our possession, but we didn't. So the father said, well, after 400 years, I'm going to judge the nation that you serve, because they have not adhered to his laws. Do you see what I'm saying? Especially Esau, because Esau descends from, he's a Hebrew. He descends from the same, lineage of Abraham. So these things are applicable to him. You see what I'm saying? He's our brother. So if he's the one who's in the cause of all this, he should have at least followed the law so that we go back. But he hasn't. Not only is he not given us the land back, but he's put Amalek has decided to go and sit in that same position and pose himself as some form of blood Israelite through some religious perspective, right? And that's very much incorrect. The whole ordinance part of him trying to practice it, there's no issue with that. But them trying to create a narrative that they are the ones that are narrated in the Bible, that's not true. That's far from the truth. Okay. So once we know that's the 50th year, or the Jubilees, has been amongst the 400-year captivity, you do 5 times 8, that would have been 5 Jubilees. I mean, that would have been 8 Jubilees. So that's 400 years. So you add the 400 to 1619, that's 2019. That is the cutoff period. That's when COVID hit, literally. And if you know the biblical year, you know that biblical years would have started in sometimes March, and that's when COVID started in sometime January. So even if you think that it was actually 2020, it wasn't really. It was actually, the actual COVID was released in December, sometime in 2019. But even right up until March, you're still in the year of 2019, based on the biblical calendar, because a new year starts in March. So January and February still would have been part of the previous year. And that's really where COVID was actually amplifying itself around the Gulf. You see what I'm saying? It was in December, that's when it was exposed, and then January and February, that's when it was really much like the whole world was being shut down, sort of thing. All right, so now from that, we need to now know, because 2019 would have been the 50th year of a jubilee. That would have been a jubilee. So after the 50th year, you count 7 years, right? So count 7 years from 2019. You're going to get 2026. That's the Shabbat year. That's the year that you're not supposed to. You're supposed to let the land be dormant. And there's no coincidence about these years. There's because these are going to be some specific events that are going to occur, which we're seeing. I've seen some videos to do with, 2017. Actually, let's see if I can get it. I don't know if the sound will work through this, but let me get it. Right, this is a video that I saw that kind of linked up with the fact that the Father does things in cycles, and in order for you to understand when certain events are occurring, you have to get hooked up with these cycles. Okay, so this is a video I saw. It was quite interesting. Right, so this is quite interesting because the Shabbat, the actual Shabbat year is 2026, right? As I mentioned. Now, typically after that, that's where judgment will occur, because if you've not adhered to the Shabbat year in the 2026, right? Then, like, i.e., if they're growing in the land, this is what these people are doing. If they're growing in the land of 2026, then it's 2027 that you're going to experience some form of issues, isn't it? You see, because you typically, if you do something wrong, there is something in the future that is going to happen in order to, there's something in the future that's going to be done to you due to what you did previously. So the fact that if they don't do the things right in 2026, i.e., let the land lay still, I'm talking about the people that are in the land of Israel. They are the ones that are, supposed to be adhering to it. And they I know for a fact they don't know the actual right times, because the times that they let the land still is not in sync with the Father's time. Okay, so this is quite interesting because this guy is talking about these Jewish, this is Esau, these Edomites. These are the what? This is it's quite interesting. I don't know, I might let the video play a little bit. Okay, well, I'm going to leave it at that because it's now he's just kind of waffling to it. So I'm not really into what he's talking about with his symbolism and what he thinks Trump is and all this sort of stuff, because they're they're pushing a totally different narrative. It's unbiblical. Trump's got nothing to do, like, as an Israelite myself, he's got nothing to do with what the children of Israel are supposed to be doing. It's more so against everything that we are supposed to be doing, right? So I just thought to just to show you the 2027. There's a important event that's going to be occurring on that particular time. Why? Because that's a year after the seventh or the Shabbat year, and typically that will be something where judgment will occur if the Shabbat year has not been followed correctly, right? And I know for a fact they're not going to follow it correctly. So we're going to start experiencing every 7 years. We're going to start seeing problems, and I think that might also tie into the 7 bowls of judgments. Do you see what I'm saying? Because we've got actually that's I think that's probably what's going to happen, because the 7 bowls of judgments is also going to add up to 49 years, right? Which is again what? Another jubilee. So after that 7 bowls of judgments, there'll be a year of release where then the people will be released. There'll be, you see what I'm saying? Because we had a year of release in 2019, and that was when people were supposed to be leaving. And people are still leaving. People have gone to Ghana and all this sort of stuff, right? It's just that at that particular time, people weren't managing to leave. But it's in our advantage to start making an exodus. People think that you're supposed to be waiting on God. You're not supposed to wait on God. God's waiting for you to go back home. Because the reason why Hamashiach comes back to save his people who are in Israel. So he's not coming back until there's enough people there that have been sealed for him to want to save. Do you understand? Because it talks about we'll flee to will flee to the mountains, and his feet are gonna cleave onto the mountains, and it's Mount Olives, and it's gonna split in two. You see what I'm saying? He's not coming to America. There's no America. America's a desolate. It's gonna be a desolate place. Anyway, let's continue. We'll wrap this up. We'll just finish with this chapter, I think. It says, you shall not sow your field or prune your vineyard. You shall not reap what grows of itself in your harvest, or gather the grapes of your undressed vine. It shall be a year of solemn rest for the land. The Shabbat of the land shall provide food for you, for yourself, and for your male and female slaves, and for your hired worker and the sojourner who lives with you, and for your cattle, and for the wild animals that are in your land. All its yield shall be food for you, shall be for food, the year of Jubilee. You shall count 7 weeks of the years, 7 times 7 years, so that the time of the 7 weeks of years shall give you 49 years. Then you shall sound the loud trumpet on the 10th day of the 7th month, on the day of atonement. You shall sound the trumpet throughout all your land, and you shall consecrate the 15th year, and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you, when each of you shall return to his property, and each of you shall return to his clan. That 50th year shall be a jubilee to you, for you. In it you shall neither sow nor reap what grows of itself, nor gather the grapes from the undressed vines, for it is a jubilee. It shall be holy to you. You may eat the produce of the field. In this year, a jubilee in this year of jubilee, each of you shall return to its property. And you see what I'm saying? This is dealing with the fact that the 50th year is a year of release, right? It says that everyone should return back to their property. So that is what was supposed to happen. If they're adhering to the law, Abi, the father, right? This is what you're supposed to do. Now, obviously, Edom is not doing that. He's doing his own thing. That's what they've got into bed with Canaan, and they're into all this Masonic stuff, which is worshipping Shaitan, or Hashatan, sorry. He says, you shall pay your neighbor according to the number of years after the Jubilee, and you shall sell according to the number of years for crops. If the years are many, you shall increase the price, and if the years are few, you shall reduce the price, for it is the number of the crops that he is selling to you. You shall not wrong one another, but you shall fear your Lord, for I am the Lord your God. Therefore you shall do my statutes and keep my rules and perform them, and then you will dwell in the land securely. The land will yield its fruit, and you will eat your fill and dwell in it securely. And if you say, what shall we eat in the 7th year? If we may not sow or gather in our crop, I will command my blessing on you in the 6th year, so that it will produce a crop sufficient for 3 years. When you sow it in the 8th year, you will be eating some of the old crops. You shall eat the old until the 9th year, then its crops arrives. Okay, so So it's basically saying it for the 6th year, you're gonna yield plenty, enough crops to see you for 3 years. Why? Because it's gonna have to see you over the 7th year, and then the 8th year, which would be the 50th year. And then the first year is obviously going to be the year that you're going to be planting, but you won't have food. So it's going to obviously see you for that the first year as well. You see what I'm saying? So this is a spiritual thing. This is why we should be hooked up with the Father in all his times, because he's going to make supernatural events occur, i.e., even with our crops. Right? So it says redemption of property. It says the land shall not be sold in perpetuity. Perpetuity, sorry. For the land is mine, for you are strangers. So see, this land, the land of Israel, that belongs to Abba. It doesn't belong to anyone else. You can't make no state of that land, or you can't. It belongs to the Father. He's the one that decides who stays on it, who doesn't. That's why the Torah is the door to that land. If you observe Torah, you can go on that. That's why the Jewish people there, they can stay on that land because they observe Torah to some level. Even though they do it more literal rather than spiritual. He said, for you are strangers and sojourners with me, and in the country you possess, you shall allow a redemption of the land. If your brother becomes poor and sells part of his property, then his nearest redeemer shall come and redeem what his brother has sold. If a man has no one to redeem it, and then himself becomes prosperous and finds sufficient means to redeem it, let him calculate the years since he sold it, and pay back the balance to the man to whom he sold it, and return to his property. But if he does not have sufficient means to recover it, then what he sold shall remain in the hand of the buyer until the year of Jubilee. In the Jubilee it shall be released, and he shall return to his property. If a man sells a dwelling house in a walled city, he may redeem it within a year of its sale. For a full year he shall have the right of redemption. If it is not redeemed within a full year, the house in the walled city shall be long in perpetuity. Sorry, I get mixed up with another word. To the buyer throughout of his generations, it shall not be released in the Jubilee, but the houses of the villages that have no wall around them shall be classified with the fields of the land. It says, if a man sells a dwelling house in the walled city, he may redeem it within a year of its sale. For a full year, he shall have the right to redemption. If it's not redeemed in the full year, then the house in the walled city shall